Hi! So, I assume a lot of you are going to be WWE fans, which is fine, you know what I mean, no hate. But obviously over the weekend it was Elimination Chamber. And if you're not aware of, for whatever reason, hi, hello, I'm an AEW fan first and foremost, but I like most good wrestling. And obviously during Elimination Chamber, one of the big things that happened was Danhausen was debuted as the guy inside of the box. Now, I assume a lot of you might not know who Danhausen is, so I'm just going to give you guys a little brief rundown, and honestly, just want to ramble about Danhausen, because, frankly, he's a very interesting topic to me. He really is. So, Danhausen is, by all means, the definition of a comedy wrestler. He's not really an in-ring guy. You don't watch Danhausen to have these insane matches. You don't. He hasn't really had a match that I could really recall off the top of my head. He's had great moments. But match-wise, he's not, like, putting on clinics like Moxley is, for instance, right? He's very much a comedic figure. He's very much going to fit WWE like a glove. It works perfectly for him. I think you're going to have a lot of Danhausen backstage segments. You're going to have a lot of funny interactions. If you want my instant comparison, because a lot of people like that, he is a mix, to me, of Santino Marella, 100%, and Boogeyman, purely from presentation. But that's Danhausen's whole MO. You know, you're going to get this. He's probably going to be the successor to R-Truth's role, frankly. You know, him and Joe Hendry are probably going to tear that fucking mid-card up. But either way, I feel like Danhausen will fit. I think you're going to have a lot of fun interactions with a lot of wrestlers. Obviously, he has got a great relationship with Punk. They probably will put him with Punk at some point, because he is probably the reason he's there, frankly. He's got a great relationship with Punk. And he calls him Danhausen's whole thing, again, one of the big reasons for the Santino Marella comparison is the Pepsi Phil. He calls him Pepsi Phil. He calls everyone weird names. His main things he's had going in AEW, in terms of, like, teamwork-wise, was Cassidy and the Best Friends, which was, like, Shibata and Hook. Hookhausen became its whole thing, just him and Hook. He had, like, a small thing with MJF. It wasn't really in AEW. Him and Pepsi Phil were friends outside, and he was just that guy. Like, his debut in AEW is literally Adam Cole goes for a chair, and he pops up and curses. That's Danhausen's whole thing. He'll point at you, curse at you, and just be overall weird. And you probably experienced that from the debut, and we'll talk about the debut in WWE in a second, but that's Danhausen's whole thing. It's great, it's funny, the kids are going to love him. As, like, the way Jey Uso was beloved by kids in a way, he's probably going to be, maybe not that level, because Jey Uso was very, you know, because, we want him to be the guy. But it was like, Danhausen's he's just going to be fun. He's got that instant marketability. He's one of the only wrestlers, I think he was the first, to trademark his face paint, which he even passed that knowledge on to Sting, which I think is really cool. Yeah, like, again, you're not going to really be watching Danhausen for these insane matches. You're not. You're going to be watching Danhausen for these funny backstage segments. I'd be baffled if Danhausen has these in, honestly, a match for a while. And if not, it's not a squash match. He's probably going to be your guy who does, like, you know, your Kit Wilson-esque thing of, you know, being squashed by Obafemi and stuff. Like, I don't know if he goes to NXT. I don't know if he goes to main roster. Whatever. But regarding let's talk about his debut dead quick. They teased his debut by, you know, announcing this whole thing with the box. I don't really watch WWE, so I can't really say. But he was teasing this box for like a week or two, I believe, and then he revealed, and Elimination Chamber, they opened the box and they come out with like 8 girl dancers dressed up as Danhausen, doing a little dance routine. He walked out with them, and just, you know, he gave Michael Cole some teeth, and then they give him one singular pyro, and then he vanished. Now, frankly, I think that was funny. I know a lot of people are pissed, and I feel like I get it. I get that, because, frankly, even seeing Danhausen walk down a ramp felt weird to me. I don't think Danhausen's that type of guy. He shouldn't be presented like that. Danhausen, his debut again in AEW was literally him coming out of just underneath a ring, just unannounced. That's Danhausen's whole MO. He's not really a big spectacle guy. I hope WWE realise that for him. I think that works, but like, he doesn't work as this guy who you want this extravagant presentation, but maybe they're gonna try and, like, you know, make that the joke where it's like this big whole massive presentation, but it's end of the day it's still Danhausen. He's just a just raunchy weirdo, frankly. And I think that's the biggest obstacle. Like, I think that's why a lot of people are gonna be pissed. If they shouldn't have built Danhausen up like that, I get why, because he's gonna be marketable as hell. The kids are gonna love him. Everything about it. He's entertaining. He's gonna fit WWE, and frankly, it's the best move for him. I think he's going to be nothing but a success. I just think they just really just need to get out of the let's make a big deal out of him. Like the singular pyro, great. The dancers didn't work for him. But unless you're going to go over extravagant with him, like to an nth degree, that's what works. I just think Danhausen's like, I seen someone say it, I forget who was, sorry, apologies, but Danhausen's whole thing is he just pops up to get a cheap pop, curses someone and fucks off. That's Danhausen's whole thing, and he's funny as hell. That's what you're going to expect from Danhausen, but the debut, it's not bad inherently, it's just, it was the wrong guy to present like that, but hopefully they realise this. I don't think he should go to NXT, I think he should be a main roster. He's not really that guy to go to NXT to refine his in-ring, because you're not going to get Danhausen having these extravagant matches yet again. But as an entertainer, I wish him nothing but the best. I like Danhausen. It's been a shame that he's been on ice for this long. But in general, I just think it's going to work. I think it's definitely going to work for Danhausen. I just think it makes the most sense. Him, Phil, this is the thing. Like, there's no shade with a lot of people of. Sometimes AEW doesn't work for some wrestlers, sometimes WWE does. I feel like Danhausen is a great example of that. Another one is probably Ethan Page, where I don't think Danhausen, I don't think it's a fumble, because, you know, he wasn't really that type of guy. AEW is very much an athletic, it's similar to New Japan in terms of its athletic sports type of presentation for wrestling. WWE is very much entertainment, and if that's your thing, that's your thing. Again, there's no shade with that. It's just, that is, frankly, what the difference is, and Danhausen's not a in-ring, bell-to-bell, insane wrestler that AEW kind of pride itself on. He's not. So it's a great move. And frankly, yeah, I think if you're a WWE fan, you didn't know who Danhausen is or was prior to this, you're going to enjoy him. Just take him in. He's going to be great. He's going to be really fun. You're going to probably have some great fun segments with the guy. He's just think he's just a weirdo. He is just, frankly, a weirdo. He won't make sense, but that's the fun of him. He's incredibly charming, and honestly, I'll be baffled if you're not all behind him straight away, because the guy is great. I'm so happy for the guy, and it's gonna work. Honestly, I really do think that. So yeah, that's my little, like, you know, brief ramble on Danhausen. I'm not really the biggest. I haven't got much. I like Danhausen. I've always had an opinion on him, but I've never really been a guy who goes every week on where's Danhausen. I think it works. I just think, again, I think this is the right move. I think it's gonna work for all parties. Just if you're not experienced with Danhausen, I hope you enjoy him. I really do, and I think he'll do great. And if you're an AEW fan or got any experience with Danhausen, let me know what you think of him, because I think it's a really interesting topic, because the guys come into a bit of a shitty situation in terms of how they presented him. But do you think it'll work? What's your favourite Danhausen? And what's your favourite Danhausen moment? What's your favourite Danhausen? That's more like Danhausen himself. And if you have any moments to suggest of Danhausen, I recommend you suggest them, because if you ask me for one, I mean, I think it's just more behind the scenes stuff that gets me with Danhausen. But either way, he's going to be great. I wish him nothing but the best.